Welcome to this fifth episode of Death Row Stories. Studies show that Republicans are more likely to support the death penalty. More likely means that not all conservatives are on board. And today we'll dive into why. When I heard that the director of a group called Texas Conservatives Concerned by the Death Penalty was invited by the Texas Coalition to abolish the death penalty, I thought it would be interesting to hear what she would have to say. Today I'm sharing this with you because this topic isn't just about politics.
I'm Nan Tolson. I'm the director of Texas Conservatives Concerned about the Death Penalty. I am a conservative, I'm a Christian, I'm a lifelong Texan, and this group of conservatives, myself included, we are so disheartened that the state that we know and the state that we love continues to allow an archaic, unethical system that commits the same violence that it claims to condemn. And we are especially disheartened at such a time as this because Texas continues to lead the nation in executions, and the state has put to death 5 people in 2024. And in just 1 week, Texas is set to execute Robert Robertson, an innocent father from East Texas who has spent more than 20 years on death row for a crime that did not even occur. And this execution looms despite overwhelming scientific and medical evidence that Roberson's chronically ill 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, died of natural and accidental causes. Since 1973, there have been 200 individuals who have been exonerated that were convicted and sentenced to death. And this includes 17 in Texas alone, convicted and sentenced to death, and they were innocent. And there's actually strong evidence that Texas has executed several innocent people. And what's very clear is that the death penalty is not 100% foolproof. It is an irreversible punishment that we cannot afford to get wrong. It is impossible to ensure absolute accuracy every single time. And when one life is on the line, that is one too many. The risk of wrongful execution is just one reason that myself and many conservatives across our state have started to speak out against the death penalty. We also point to the fact that the death penalty is also fiscally irresponsible. Every cost study in the United States shows that it costs taxpayers more to convict and sentence somebody to death than it would to convict and sentence them to life without parole. And on top of that, the death penalty also doesn't keep us safe. There is no conclusive evidence that the death penalty is an effective deterrent to violent crime. And a study by chiefs of police actually ranked the death penalty last in their most useful methods to prevent crime. And most importantly for us as conservatives, and particularly for pro-life conservatives, we believe that the death penalty directly contradicts pro-life values. For conservatives like myself, we take what I would call a consistent life ethic approach, which is conception to natural death, womb to tomb, that all life matters. And for many of us, like myself, my pro-life values are tied to my faith. I believe that we are all made in the image of God, that the value of our life is not conditional, and that includes men and women on death row, guilty or innocent. We all matter, all of our lives matter, because they all matter to God. And we also believe that the death penalty harms what some might deem innocent life too. So not only are there innocent people who are sitting on death row, but the capital punishment system also re-traumatizes families and traumatizes families of both perpetrators and victims. It traumatizes members of the jury. It traumatizes chaplains, wardens, witnesses, anyone who has a hand willingly or unwillingly in this process. For us, executions create more grieving families, and it perpetuates a cycle of violence and a loss of life. And to us, that is not pro-life, no matter how you look at it. And so for all these reasons and more, conservatives in Texas have started questioning the alignment of capital punishment with our values. So one of the big questions is, well, where did this start? So most recently in 2019, The Texas House of Representatives passed several death penalty-related bills with significant bipartisan support. Bills that would prevent people with severe mental illness from being executed, people with intellectual disabilities, and then also bills that would strengthen due process, clarify jury instructions in capital cases, and they passed with bipartisan support in the House. Unfortunately, they did not gain traction in the Senate, but members of the House, particularly Republicans, were motivated to continue these efforts. And so that summer, a bipartisan group of lawmakers launched the House Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. And since its creation, that caucus, which includes Republicans and Democrats, have been particularly active on 2 other innocence cases in Texas besides Robert Roberson's case. So the first is Rodney Reed, whose name might ring a bell for those of you who have been keeping up with the death penalty in Texas for quite some time. So Rodney Reed, who is a black man, was convicted and sentenced to death by an all-white jury for the 1996 rape and murder of Stacey Stites, despite egregious flaws in his case and mounting evidence that has continued to cast significant doubt on his guilt. And Rodney received unprecedented bipartisan support. So countless conservatives, lawmakers in Texas and DC, district attorneys, other prominent figures called on the state of Texas to spare Rodney's life. And 5 days before he was set to be put to death, Rodney was granted a stay of execution by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and litigation in his case remains pending at the federal level. We've also seen a groundswell of support around Melissa Lucio. In 2022, Melissa is an innocent woman convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of her toddler, Mariah. And a powerful alliance of lawmakers, again, on both sides, came together in 2022 to ask Texas to spare her life. So the Court of Criminal Appeals stayed her execution. It was 2 days before she was scheduled to be put to death, and her case is continuing to work its way through the court. So as of right now, she is alive and she is safe. But these outcomes would not have been possible without conservative voices here in Texas. Between Republican support for individuals like Rodney and Melissa and Robert and the gains in the House, it's very clear that conservatives across the state are questioning at the very least, but opposing the system at best. And it's a system that we believe doesn't keep us safe. It's a system that kills innocent people. It's arbitrarily administered. It puts too much power in the hands of the government. It mistakes revenge for justice. It bleeds taxpayers dry. And for us, it's a system that does not respect the inherent sanctity of human life. And we believe that it is past time for Texas to utilize real public safety solutions that will not only keep us safe, but respect the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. And so that's where Texas conservatives' concerned comes in. So our efforts formally launched last fall, and since then we have been working around the clock to educate conservatives on the flaws of capital punishment and also mobilize those that are questioning or completely against capital punishment. So we work with conservatives because we are conservative. And all it takes is one conversation, one event, one social media post to potentially plant that seed and reach new people. And I know that firsthand because I grew up in Texas, conservative, and didn't really think anything about the death penalty. I thought that it worked. It was this thing that we do. But when I was in college at Baylor, I sat down for chapel one day and there was a speaker and he presented the Christian case against capital punishment, and my life changed. I heard a new perspective, and from that moment on, I knew in good faith that I could not support the death penalty. And it was because of that one event, that one conversation that was had. That's all it took for me. And I've heard from conservatives that changed their minds once they learned that it didn't work, or when they reconsidered what it meant to be pro-life, or when they heard about cases like Rodney or Melissa or Robert. And so it's obvious that the more we educate and the more we question, we will change minds and hearts. And that's on both sides of the aisle. And we will get people, especially conservatives, to think critically about the death penalty. That's really the most important thing. It's just get people to think about what the death penalty is and what does it mean for us and for our state. And so obviously we have our work cut out for us here in Texas, but we really can't do it without every single one of you, whether you identify as conservative or not. It's going to take every single person to end the death penalty in Texas. So how do you do that? There are a variety of different ways to get involved to help us in capital punishment. You can get involved with organizations like Texas Conservatives Concerned if you identify as conservative. If you don't, you can get involved in organizations like TCADP. They do fantastic work. Signing petitions, sharing on social media, writing letters to lawmakers, showing up when it counts, all of these things make a difference. And it's also important to vote. We have an election coming up, and it's important to educate yourself and vote for candidates up and down the ballot, including district attorneys, state lawmakers, and people or candidates for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. All of these positions matter when it comes to the death penalty. And most importantly for us, and I think this is because this is the core of what our work does, or what our work is, but it's important to just have conversations and not debates and arguments with people in your life about capital punishment. Even if you don't see eye to eye on that, or maybe you don't see eye to eye with them on anything, just having a respectful, productive conversation really does a lot. It truly makes a difference, and it gets people thinking critically about these really important issues. And change doesn't happen overnight. Capital punishment, unfortunately, is still part of our culture in Texas, but that doesn't have to be. We believe that there's another way, and I know that all of us in here believe that there's a different way, and this is an issue that we should all care about, whether you're political or apolitical, conservative or Democrat, Christian or non-Christian, and there's nothing more powerful than collective action. I am just so grateful that you all have joined us, and I hope that you continue to join us as we work toward hopefully a safer and more just future for the state of Texas. So thank you all.
In the audience, somebody asked about the Christian perspective. What does the Bible really say about the death penalty? We'll explore this more deeply in another episode, but here's Nan Tolson's take on this.
It's always really interesting to talk to fellow Christians about their views on the death penalty. But yeah, usually I hear quite often Old Testament scripture, and especially Leviticus is one too. I hear an eye for an eye quite a lot. But at the same time, I also hear Christians that talk about the Jesus stopping a legal execution of a woman that was caught in adultery in the New Testament, or the fact that Jesus himself was wrongfully convicted and wrongfully executed, and all of the other verses that point to the fact that we were made in the image of God, that God desires all to come to him, to repent, to turn away from evil, and the fact that there is so much hope in the gospel, and the fact that nobody is too far gone, that we are all capable of asking for forgiveness and receiving forgiveness from the Lord, and that if that's what the gospel preaches, that that's something that we should do in our everyday lives, and that especially applies to capital punishment.
Another pressing topic was the financial cost of the death penalty, an issue that hits home for many conservatives who care about fiscal responsibility.
The conservatives I talk to, they're very surprised when they find out that the death penalty is so much more expensive. And when I've talked to some lawmakers, I can tell that it kind of gets them thinking. And then there are some that they've said yes, but then maybe they still have some moral concerns or some moral reasonings to support the death penalty or things like that. So they seem very interested, and we kind of see it as a really great foot in the door with conservatives, whether it's a conservative lawmaker or just a conservative that we're talking to just randomly on the street, that it kind of opens the door, gets them thinking about the death penalty. But ultimately, because this issue, it is very emotional, and those kinds of numbers may start the conversation, but what ultimately typically changes people's minds is a personal conviction. And so that's when we talk more about, well, what does it mean to be pro-life? What does a consistent life ethic look like? Or how do you feel about the fact that innocent people have been wrongfully convicted? Or what do you think the Bible actually says about the death penalty, or about crime and punishment and redemption and things like that? That's usually where we see the major shift for conservatives and why they oppose the death penalty. So the fiscal part, it's it's catchy and it gets people thinking. And then you bring in the conviction, and then a lot of people look at it and they say, any way you look at it, it just doesn't make sense.
And here's something to think about. The death penalty capital of the world isn't in a conservative stronghold of Texas. I sat down with Estelle Hebron-Jones from the Texas Defender Service to talk about this topic. I really encourage you to check out this episode. To all our subscribers, thank you. Your support through subscriptions, ratings, comments, and thumbs up help spread the word and make my day brighter. Thank you.